So Calvi had a deep passion to find out who held the secret power, so he could join them and be on the winning side, which makes a lot of sense if you want to be on the left. I'm always amazed by paranoids who find out who holds the power and then spend all their time fighting with them. If you know who holds the power, the thing to do is join them. If you're going to fight them, you're just going to wear yourself down, right? Doesn't that make sense, or do we have some idealists left in the world? Well, Calvi joined Propaganda Due and got to be president of Banco Ambrosiano. Nicolai Sindona, who was a lawyer for the Mafia, for several Mafia families in particular in Sicily, he joined Pay Due and got sent over to the United States, where he offered Richard Nixon $1 million for the 1972 campaign, which Nixon's people decided to decline because they didn't like the possibility of this being traced back to the Mafia. Whether they ever managed to give the $1 million to Nixon through some subterranean channel, I have been unable to discover. But Sindona was at Nixon's inauguration that year. Sindona founded the Franklin National Bank in this country, and shortly thereafter was convicted of 65 counts of stock and currency fraud and faking his own kidnapping to avoid trial on those 65 counts. Then he hired, Nixon was out of office by then, he hired Nixon's law firm to fight his extradition to Italy, and they fought for a long time, 7 or 8 years, before Sindona was finally sent back to Italy, where he was convicted of murdering a bank examiner in connection with the failure of several of his banks over there, from which he had embezzled as much money as he had embezzled from the Franklin National Bank over here. And then he was about to stand trial for conspiracy with Gelli and General Michieli of the secret police, Licio Gelli, in this fascist conspiracy to overthrow the government of Italy. Before he could stand trial on that charge, he was poisoned in his cell. Roberto Calvi was indicted for embezzling from his own bank, for laundering heroin money for the Grey Wolves and other groups in the Near East. But the Grey Wolves are especially interesting. They believe Allah, the Islamic God, has appointed them to destroy the state of Israel. Now, Allah, like many gods, is inscrutable. He says, go do this, and he doesn't tell you how. The Grey Wolves are a bunch of poor Palestinians with not a pot to piss in, so to speak, or at least they were when they started out. How are they going to overthrow Israel? Well, they figured out how. They started dealing heroin. And pretty soon they had enough money to buy lots of guns. And then they found another source of money. They started renting out some of their leading, most talented young men as assassins to other terrorist groups around Europe. And that made more money for them. Finally, one of them tried to shoot the Pope for reasons that have never been explained. It gets Byzantine, doesn't it? This money was being laundered through the Banco Ambrosiano, which was owned by the Vatican Bank, which was managed by Archbishop Paul Marcinkus. Have you ever heard of Archbishop Paul Marcinkus before tonight? Isn't that amazing? Everybody in Europe has heard of Archbishop Paul by now. And in this country, he got into the headlines back in the early 70s when Frank Hogan, the district attorney of New York, tried to extradite him to the United States to stand trial. And the Vatican refused to let him be extradited. And there was a bit of a tussle over that. What Hogan wanted Marcinkus to stand trial for was Hogan had, and his investigators, had discovered that the Rizzi family in New York and the Roselli family in Las Vegas. Now, Johnny Roselli started out as a gunman for Al Capone, but he ended up running all Mafia projects in the Las Vegas, Nevada area. Johnny Roselli was frequently accused of being in on the Kennedy assassination by various amateurish and bungling conspiracy investigators who aren't as smart as I am. I mean, by conspiracy investigators of the highest intelligence and integrity who arrived at different conclusions than me. Johnny Roselli and the Rizzi family in New York printed $1 billion in counterfeit stock and deposited them in the Vatican Bank, whereupon they disappeared. The Vatican Bank is the financial equivalent of a black hole. You know, a black hole, nothing ever gets out of, not even light. Even light can't escape from a black hole. Well, nobody knows what's going on in the Vatican Bank except the people who run it, because the Italian bank examiners can't get in. The Vatican is not part of Italy. It's a sovereign state. That's why Noriega could take refuge in the Vatican embassy. It's a sovereign state. They have embassies just like any other government. They're not only a church, they're a government too. So nobody can get into the Vatican Bank. So once something gets into the Vatican Bank, it disappears from profane view, and only God and Archbishop Marcinkus know what becomes of it. So $1 billion of counterfeit stock went into the Vatican Bank and was seen no more. Now, letters were produced in which Archbishop Marcinkus is corresponding with Johnny Roselli about getting this $1 billion in counterfeit stock. Now, the defenders of the good Archbishop, of whom you'll find quite a few among pious Roman Catholics who don't want to believe that an Archbishop would be engaged in knowingly dealing in counterfeit stocks, they claim he thought he was buying real stocks. He didn't know the Mafia prints counterfeit stocks. Well, that's possible, because maybe he thought he was dealing in baby booties, and they never explained to him, you got to do it. But if he thought he was buying real stocks, it's very strange that he paid only 1/10 of the face value. Because that's the going price for counterfeit stocks, 1/10 of the face value. Counterfeit stocks travel around the world, and they're faster and faster all the time, going in more directions. It's very much like quantum theory. You can never know where they are. You just know they've been here, and now they're going to be there. You never know where they are. If you have a business that's in trouble, and you buy counterfeits, you buy enough counterfeit stocks, let's say you got enough capital to, let's say, just $1 million. So you got $1 million and you have debts of $3 million, and they're all poor. The sheriff is at the door. Your business might go bankrupt any day. So you take your $1 million and buy $10 million worth of counterfeit stocks. You deposit the $10 million of counterfeit stocks into your bank. You've now got a $10 million line of credit. You pay off everybody you owe money to. You're not in trouble anymore. You expand your business. You hire new people. You build new plants, and then you sell the stock to somebody else equally desperate. And if the stock keep moving fast enough, they don't get caught. The stocks that get caught are not counterfeit stocks by and large. It's stolen stocks that banks are apt to notice. Counterfeit stocks, they sometimes notice, but if they move fast enough, the banks don't look at them that closely, and so they keep traveling. So this $1 billion in counterfeit stocks went into the Vatican Bank, and God knows where it went after that, but banks started collapsing all over the world. Wall Street almost collapsed, and there's continuous turmoil in the international economic community, because $10 billion in counterfeit stocks is more goddamn counterfeit stocks than have ever been loose at any one time before. Well, District Attorney Hogan did not manage to extradite Marcinkus. Nixon intervened to protect Marcinkus. There's an implication that Nixon was afraid of losing the Catholic vote. I don't know. Nixon also had Sedona as a guest at his inauguration, so one feels there was a closer connection than just the Catholic vote. In 1981, the District Attorney of Dade County indicted 8 officers of the World Finance Corporation in Miami for operating, he said, knowingly operating the largest cocaine laundromat ever uncovered. The DA got interested in this bank, the World Finance Corporation, because garbage men had told the police that they kept finding marijuana stems in the garbage. And not stems, the stalks. The stalks, that you break the stems off before you take the leaves off the stems, you know. They break big marijuana stalks in the garbage all the time. And these garbage men apparently weren't pot smokers themselves, or they would have kept their mouth shut, just went into the bank and said, "Can we buy something?" You know. And they went and told the police, and the police told the DA, and they put the bank under surveillance. And they very soon discovered that people were coming from Panama every day with briefcases full of cash. Panama is the only country in the world that uses American dollars outside America as its currency. These people are coming in every day with briefcases full of money, not checks, cash. And this bank was running it all through the Cisalpine Bank in the Bahamas. And so the district attorney started investigating the Cisalpine Bank in the Bahamas. And guess who owned the Cisalpine Bank in the Bahamas? Archbishop Marcinkus and Roberto Calvi. And the money went from the Cisalpine Bank to the Vatican Bank, along with all the heroin money from the Grey Wolves, and the Catholic Church was getting richer all the time. And some of the money was going to Poland to support Solidarity, which made the CIA very happy. A lot of the money found its way back to Central America to support the death squads that the CIA is running, because the Senate Intelligence Committee, from the time Jimmy Carter got in 1976, until Reagan got in 1980, the Senate Intelligence Committee was getting a lot of cooperation from Stanfield Turner, who was the head of the CIA. At that time, disapproved of the CIA's involvement with the drug business and fired over 400 agents for being involved in the drug business. And the Senate Intelligence Committee was learning a great deal about the CIA's involvement in the drug business, so the CIA fired all these people, who thereupon went into the drug business in a much bigger way than ever before. And Theodore Shackley, who was running all this, was dispatched by them, according to the Christic Institute, which has documents. He was dispatched by them to persuade George Bush, who had been the supervisor of the whole project, to run for president. So if they could get Bush into the White House, they could go back into business as they were doing it before, inside the government instead of outside the government, and thereby have greater protection. Well, Bush did not win the presidency. He only got the vice presidency. But Reagan made him the head of the National Security Agency, which gave him oversight over the CIA. So they were all soon back in business again, which is why in 1981 they had this bank with 8 CIA agents running it in Miami. And I was wondering, all this cocaine money to pay for the death squad, which Congress wasn't supposed to know anything about, and which most Americans still don't know anything about even today. You say death squads to most people, and they say, you mean the Nazis in the Second World War, something like that? No, I mean death squads right now all over Latin America, killing anybody who objects to American domination. They come into villages at night, they shoot people at random to terrorize the whole village. This is being paid for by the drug business. I'm sorry, if you like cocaine, this might make me feel a bit queasy about it, but I told you wouldn't find this plot as funny as the first plot. I'm telling you occult secrets. These are things that are hidden, that the profane do not know about, that are not revealed in the mass media.